Hey guys, Thomas the Jr. here, aka Mustached, here to review the movie There's Something Wrong with the Children. If you end up enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One to head you over to my petition. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server where you can join and share your content for free. And Shelling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into There's Something Wrong with the Children. Now, I didn't see any trailers for this, and based off of stuff, assumptions perhaps, I think this is one of those lower budget movies. So I'll get into it. So the movie focuses on these two couples. So one is paired with their children, and the other seems to be relatively taking care of them more so. We have our first couple of Margaret and Ben, who are the ones not with children. And we have Ellie and Thomas, who are the ones with children. And so they begin to head out to do a little hike. And the lot of them, with the two children in tow, one boy, one girl, head into a tunnel, and the kids vanish very briefly. The kids' names being Lucy and Spencer. We see that they have stopped in front of a opening that leads into this gaping hole, and the kids become fixated by said hole, saying that it's some sort of light, and one of them bleeds through the nose, and we see that the other one does as well. So they've been entranced by it. But they get out of there after saving the kids, and the parents chill for a bit. And we have some one-on-one time with Ellie hanging out with Margaret, the two women chilling separately, trying to figure out what's going on. And Thomas is on the other side with Ben, prompting Ben to say that, hey, you should have kids one day, or sometime soon, you feel like, you're ready for that. They're just chilling and whatnot. So, one of them prompts to have the kids stay over at their place, the ones that don't have kids, so they're just looking after them, essentially. And we see that one of the children, Lucy, is staring, just kind of, And we hear that Spencer already wants to head back to the tunnel during this little card game that they're having at the family table during their little get-together. Meanwhile, so Margaret and Ben head outside, and Margaret got a little bit high on the drugs. Very lightweight. But she goes to check on the children and sees that they are not in the room. Ben kind of looks around the house with Margaret as well, then heads out looking outside the house, and he heads back over to the hole, assuming that's where they eventually went, and he sees them right at the cliffside of the hole and plummeting themselves into it. This, of course, causes Ben to freak out, as that's not something you just get over seeing. So he's there for a bit, trying to figure out what he's gonna do. And Margaret's all the way back, still at the house, kind of waiting to see if anything pops up on their end. All the while, Ben is there for quite an obvious while. But he inevitably comes back and is getting ready to uh, unfold the bad news that they have lost the kids to falling into a pit. All the while, he makes his way back, getting ready to say this, and just as he peeks back into what would be like the homestead, uh, like just moments before we see Margaret see the two children, quote unquote, run around like nothing had ever happened. And Ben comes in a little later, seeing that result in being a little bit obviously thrown off. He just saw them fall off. So he's like, what is happening? Now, this is an interesting flip, at least from a few movies I've seen. Typically, and it's not always the case, but more often the case when there's a couple involved and there's bad things afoot, it is usually more often the woman that is the one seeing the events unfold and has to convince the husband. But there we have it flipped where the husband is now the one who has to try to compel the wife that there's something wrong with these kids. So, he's like trying to study them, like what happened, why are they here? Staring at them menacingly. He's checking on them, trying to see like how, trying to even ask them directly, like what happened, and they seem to be like, very intuitive of not telling him directly anything unless he's alone. So Ben, as I just mentioned, tries to tell Margaret the truth about what he had witnessed, and obviously, based off of this, he apparently experienced some mental breakdown at some other point, based off of what I was getting from the dialogue. Excuse me. So, this causes Margaret to not necessarily believe what he is saying here. However, when Ben is all alone, the kids pop in on him and vanish rather quickly. So he goes to Thomas, and he's trying to just, play it off at this point. But he sees like one of them like hold up a pike and like get ready to swing, and he starts to become less and less of a what's the word, positive, not a something narrator. Oh god, I forgot. A narrator you can trust. Just you seeing things that he is not clear, that are not clearly there, is sort of the point. Anyway, the unreliable narrator. That's the word I was looking for. Anyway, so he sees that the kids are trying to concoct the pills, and Ben like shoves the pills away and it's like, say, here, like, the kids are trying to get you drugged, and he's like, no, these are not even like effective or anything. And even when the daughter like tried to open the beer, where she did the thing that the father did at the earlier point, like off of the table, he's just like impressed. But Ben's like yelling at them, and then they're like yelling at each other, and the two couples are now arguing with each other. Um, so, they have another moment where they have they isolate Ben once more, but this time Spencer like pretends to prod him with a poker thingy, and then he ends up choking himself out. So everyone sees, at least accordingly, that Spencer dies, quote unquote. And they all believe it to be Ben, because he was the only one there with him. So the police are called, and Margaret leaves very upset with this. And Ben wants to head back to the cave where he witnessed them fall, and she's trying to convince Margaret one last time. So she reluctantly goes, and she's like, fine, but if it's nothing, we clearly have to deal with what just happened here. So she ends up following him, and then when they get to the hole, there's clearly nothing there. So that's the final straw, at least for now. Margaret heads back, and she's given a flower from the daughter, who's kind of like, the dialogue is like shifting between whether or not she quote unquote knows what's going on with in dealing with Margaret. But she clearly guides Thomas into the woods as Margaret heads back to deal with the police, or getting ready to anyways. But by the time she gets back, Ellie and Spencer are both gone. So Margaret starts hearing some weird bug-like noises, and she starts trying to call Ben from her phone. He's not picking up because we see a brief cutaway at some point between then and now to him seeing the light that the kids saw. So he's obviously been pulled in by this part of the movie. Margaret continues to hear the noises at the door as she sort of becomes the main character of the movie at this point moving forward. So that's an interesting double flip, I guess. She gets to Ellie, who's all bloodied up, and sees Spencer, who's obviously been alive this entire time. And his eyes glow green to show that he has been possessed by whatever bug thing that they are now. We also see in the shadows that Lucy transforms from a bug into another kid. So the quote-unquote kids play hide and seek. But Margaret manages to buffet her way out of there. This is where the police officer arrives, and she checks in with her, tries to get her side of the story, and she checks in on the inside, and just as the check-in goes, she gets the body at the very most and knows that something is wrong at the very most. She leaves, and this is the oddest part of the movie, is that she gets taken out, but we don't see by what. She just gets pulled, like, she gets, like, the, with her eyes and stuff like that. She falls down, and then she's dragged away, but we don't see by what. And, again, the reason why this is such an odd part of the film is that it would almost implicitly imply that these creatures, whatever they are, have some sort of telepathic ability, but it's like the only time they use it in the entire film, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. So Margaret hides under one of the cars, and we see Spencer up on the car and looking up. So she smartly calls Thomas's phone to move them, and they move. So she gets in the car, but Ben is there, and she thinks that Ben is still fine. So she follows Ben back inside, and Ben tries to convince her to join their bug cult at this point. So she grabs a machete and cuts his arm, and kind of stops because she's like, well, it still looks like my husband and still sounds like my husband, and we even see his eyes glow green, so we already know that he's possessed. But Margaret still doesn't have the quite oomph, the part ready. So the kids trip her as she gets out of that situation, and we see that she's joined back in the cave pit where one of the dead bodies is thrown into, quote-unquote, the light. And Margaret sees this and sees that there's another body there as she awakens. So when they get ready to throw another body in there, she quickly gets up, or actually kind of rather slowly gets up, but gets up quite fast enough that she's able to sneak up behind them and push them in simultaneously and make her way a ways. So she runs all the way back to the car, where she's almost stopped by Ben once again, but from almost out of nowhere, and probably pretty conveniently, because Thomas, again, just kind of comes out of nowhere, is the one who does this, and tackles Ben, and she proceeds to get in the car and get ready to drive away. So we see her drive towards the road and a little bit away, but she stops pretty briefly not too long after, and she starts crying. Essentially, the trio of alien bug creature thingy-mabobs make their way onto the road and hold hands, and she revs that car and gets ready to run them over. And just as she drives, it cuts into the movie ending. And there's something wrong with the children. And I would say for what I, again, assume is a low-budget film, it's okay, I guess. I could see what they were going for, and I've definitely seen another similar movie to this before a bit ago. So I think they did a decent job. I do think that the thing with the police officer is the most bizarre part of the film. When you could have just showed one of them just like right behind her after the fact or whatever. Something to indicate like what exactly happened, or give us something rather than this playing it off like it's this sort of bizarre, again, telepathic ability, which again is baffling considering they don't do that at any other point of the film. But outside of that, I would say they play up their roles pretty well, all things considered. So yeah, I would probably give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. I can see that being the case. Again, they need a little bit of cleanup there, but I don't think it's like, that bad. So yeah, that's my review of There's Something Wrong with the Children, and if you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server, where you can join, collab, and chill and do all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye!